Hey, Rick.
Sir.
I'm Gary Blevins. I don't have a name tag. I am a county commissioner.
Okay, we appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Good luck with that.
This is C.B. McKinnon. He's taking Lorraine Meltz's place, and he is a commissioner also.
All right.
If you're at your county quorum.
Okay, well, we have a forum.
Okay.
And this looks like.
Since we only have one more meeting, so I thought I'd mention it.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome, everyone. If you have trouble hearing, raise your hand or throw something or do something so that we can make sure that you hear everything. As we get started tonight, I'd like to call Bill Nolan from Hayes County, please, in prayer.
Let us pray. O God, our liberation and peace, we seek the power of your Spirit, that we may live in full union with you, ourselves, and our sisters and brothers with mental illness. May our actions and decisions lead us to overcome fear, acquire knowledge, and be advocates for compassion and enlightened treatment and service. May we go forward into our community with a renewed sense of vision, hope, and new beginnings for the future. Amen.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval on the agenda. I would like to add an item, regional MCO planning, under Board of Directors items. I guess it's maybe it's number 6, and then have the closed session is number 7. Other than that, are there any changes to the agenda?
Move we accept it with the changes.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor of approval of the agenda as amended, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Okay, it's time for public comment. We have 2 folks signed up to speak tonight. As our policy states, public comment is limited to 5 minutes per person. Public comment will be recorded. Please disclose whether you or anyone accompanying has audio or video recording equipment with you. Please refrain from profane language during public comment. I'll call first on Mary Short, and also Jerry Rice is on deck to speak. Mary?
Hi. My name is Mary Short, and this is my daughter Katie, and we live in Alexander County. Most of you already know that. First thing, I was looking around various LME MCO websites, and one of the things I was struck by was the Alliance Behavioral Health Care website, and their board minutes, when you click on it, instead of just getting the 3 or 4 pages of the board minutes, it was 137 pages. And I thought, well, did they do an absolute word-for-word transcript? So what it was all of the documents. So it was nice to be able to look at their minutes and to be able to find all of the documents right there attached to the minutes. It was heaven on earth. You all should call them to find out how they did it and do it. Just a suggestion. Okay, the second thing is, I was on their various websites looking at their minutes because I became aware of this idea that the MCOs are, I guess through their professional group, whatever it's called, the council, are trying to figure out how to position themselves for the coming CCEs. And it all sort of sounded a little, I don't know, sounded a little like racketeering to me, but that's okay, just how it sounded to me, the way I read it all, and how it just was very uncomfortable. But if that's what they want to do, I guess that's what they want to do, and the family's parents will do what we need to do. And now the third thing I discovered was the new North Carolina Innovations Waiver that was effective August 1st of 2013, and the new Clinical Policy 8P NC Innovations Waiver that was effective August 1st. So there were a couple things about it that I didn't like, but a couple of parents contacted me about the idea. There's a service definition called community networking. Now, you are the board, and I can imagine that you should be aware of how the changes to the waiver are being implemented by the staff at the MCO. So the waiver document is changed by DHHS DMA. And this change to the community networking service definition says that relative legal guardians may no longer provide community networking. Well, if this was effective August 1st, my question is, what is happening to the relative legal guardians who have current service authorizations? And my family, who saw that in the new waiver earlier this week, she hasn't been notified by her provider or by Smoky Mountain that the waiver says she can't do that anymore. And the clinical policy says she can't do that anymore. So I just thought maybe the board should find out how that sort of change is communicated. Because, I mean, that's a really big deal if suddenly the DMA changes a waiver and eliminates a service category like that, that we relatives, legal guardians, whether you're living with or not living with, are able to provide a service. That's a very big deal. So I hope the board will somehow be involved, and I don't know. It just was very upsetting to me and the family. So that's basically all we have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Jerry Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I don't know what the reference was about videotaping or audio taping, but if you ever see me, I've got a tape recorder and I've got a video camera. And you're welcome to listen to each one of them. And if you want to see yourself on TV, just hit the YouTube, because you know you look great on YouTube. And you sound good on YouTube. So you're welcome to do that. I do want to express my appreciation for, I have to look at names, Michael here, for introducing the item to be put on the agenda to have the board material put out, and that happened, and it's really great to have that accessible to us on the internet. The other thing I'd say for the IT department, needs to fix it to where you can hit one download switch and you can get it all downloaded rather than hunt and peck on each one to get it. Now, the word is they can't do it. Well, technology is made to fix anything. And my son is an engineer in that line, so I might have to hook you up with or grandson to help him get it done, but I'm happy to do that. But the other concern I have is with Buncombe County, specifically. We're a very large county. We've got lots of things that have been put together for our people in Buncombe County that the county commissioners have worked very hard, lots of money, not just the $600,000, but Buncombe County has put a lot into it. And I'm seeing, in my opinion, some of it being eroded away by this merger. And also by the governor, and also by the hospital. So they're taking credit for a lot of things that Buncombe County has done, in my opinion. And I think we do need to work together. But the thing that bothers me is we have worked to unify our community and put behavioral health at the front of the line, and I think we've done that in Buckingham County. And my concern is that this merger don't erode it away. And I'm going to speak very direct, that I think that it could be eroded away by policies, procedures, and just a strong man's arm wants to do something. So I'm pretty pointed when I come to executive meetings and listen to them and finance committee, because that's where everything's done. You board members a lot of times don't get to meet at the meeting, so if you come to executive and finance, you're going to learn that you're really just half of a board member unless you go to those meetings, or you can look at it on YouTube later. But I do appreciate each one of you, and the thing that I noticed as well is it's all about finances, it's all about procedures, policies, and this is a train that is headed somewhere. But I don't understand how people are getting their needs met. Now, they say they are, but I've never heard the discussion around this table of how that is happening. And in my world that I serve with special kids and families, they are in lack of services. And I'm not talking about Western Highlands either. I'm talking about the whole catchment area. And I'd like to hear somebody address these specifically rather than, budgets, what the governor's doing, how the council's doing, how we're going to 3 MCOs or 3 big agencies or whatever. We need to hear something that's talking about the people that we live with. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next item on the agenda is Consumer and Family Advisory Committee report. Pat?
Thank you. Well, in July, we had regional CFAC meetings. July the 18th, we had the 3rd meeting of the CFAC Transition Work Group with members and liaisons from each group. July 29th and 30th, 2 CFAC members from the Central Region attended the person-centered thinking training. I was one of them, and I thought it was a really good training. I'd like to encourage all of you at some point, if you have an opportunity and a little extra time, take some of this training. It really went more in depth. I had some person-centered planning training, and actually at one point in my life, somebody stuck a plan in front of you and said, "Here's your person-centered plan, sign here." So, and I didn't have anything to do with developing it, but now that's been a good many years ago, so I did know kind of what person-centered planning was supposed to be, and this took it a step further, and I was glad to be able to go to that. August 2nd was the 4th meeting of the CFAC Transition Work Group. August the 20th, Smoky Mountain Center had a video meeting with all 3 regions, and Western Highlands CFAC members attended as guests by video, and we also had a lady named Susie, I believe from I believe she's from Alexander County, I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that she was representing the Breakfast Club, which is a club that Mary and some other...
No.
You're not connected with them anymore?
No.
Okay, excuse me, my bad. Anyway, it's a club, I believe a lot of IDD parents have breakfast once in a while and discuss issues, and she came to our CFAC meeting. August 21st, we had the state and local CFAC conference call. August 30th is the next meeting of the CFAC Transition Work Group, and we hope to start meeting weekly during September and possibly October. Smoky Mountain Center and Western Highlands CFACs are planning a meet and greet for everybody that are members of our CFACs to get together and meet each other. This is planned. The date we decided on is October 19th, but I believe there's some location problems, so the location is yet to be determined. And the Smoky Mountain CFAC Steering Committee will meet September the 9th. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Pat. Next item are board of directors items. A couple of things under board chair issues. One is, if you'll notice, Shelley's not with us tonight. She's had a slight complication thinking she would be here if she could. She's on medical leave, and she'll be back next week. Also, and I know you really can't notice that, I mean, you know Ronnie Bill's here. You can't miss him. But Ronnie was, I guess, elected at the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners annual meeting as County Commissioner of the Year. So that's quite an honor. And Ronnie next year will be president of the association. So just wanted to bring those two items to your attention. Second item is board conflict of interest in business transactions disclosures. There's none to report tonight. Number 3 is an update on joint Smoky Mountain Executive and Western Highlands Transition Committee meetings. And at this time, I'd like to call on Michael Lavin to give us an update.
Mr. Chairman, I'll try to be brief. We went over an executive committee this afternoon, I'm not sure it's called executive committee today, but at any rate, we're talking about our plans for board composition. As you know, we have to present a plan, and that plan is going to need to include the Western Highlands Group, and we're under kind of a short timeline to get this thing together. Shelley and I have met and discussed our recommendations for composition of the board. As you know, according to statute, we're going to have to go to a 21-member board with 13 of those positions prescribed by statute, and that is going to mean 21 from the combined group. So as a result, there'll be a number of folks who will have to transition on the board, but we want to try to keep as many folks as we can for continuity. We discussed the idea, for example, that we're really about two things, one of those being primary. And it kind of talks about what Mr. Rice was talking about. We're here about clients and providing services to consumers. The second piece of that is, because we're limited by our revenue streams, is to do that in the most efficient way we can to provide more and better services to those clients. So it's really about that one issue with just a tangential. So we want people on this group who are both have the long-term involvement with the agency, who are engaged and active. We want people who are knowledgeable, and we want people who are passionate about it. Unfortunately, we have a larger number of those folks in this room than we have positions. So what we've discussed is, as you know, there will be 8 positions out of the 21 that can be at large. And we talked about having some of our commissioner members in that grouping, and if I understood correctly, it's okay to present the names and so forth that we talked about. We're recommending for our 4, we decided to just, instead of trying to do a percentage based on counties, we're just going to split it. 4 for us, 4 for Western Highlands. We discussed Judy Poe from Ashe County, Larry Cox from Allegheny County, Ronnie Bill from Macon County, and Vicki Green from Jackson County as the at-large folks. Then if you back up and look at the 13 who are prescribed, and I'm going to actually go backwards here. 2 of those are non-voting members. That one of those is the LME Provider Council president or designee. So whoever that is at the time will be who we'll have. And that will be a joint, correct me if I'm wrong, that will not be our current one, but it'll be whoever's chair of that group for the 2 combined groups. Then we'll have an administrator of a hospital providing MHDDS emergency services. We had discussed initially having maybe someone from either Canada or Haywood, but after more discussion today, Mr. Vines has a good connection with someone who's just retired in the last year from a position as an administrator of a hospital and is now working on a contract basis for Memorial Mission, which would be a good, would be good for us to have that kind of relationship. So rather than approach someone in those other areas, Mr. Vines is going to talk to this gentleman, see if he's willing to serve, and we'll probably refer in that area to this fellow. 25 years, I believe, he was a hospital administrator, so long-term service there. Then next would be a person appointed by the secretary who represents the general public. Now, we've clarified, I don't know if Brian did this or Shelley or someone on staff had clarified that even though the secretary is making the appointment officially, we're allowed to submit about 1 to 3 bios of people that we would recommend for that. So we're recommending on our side, and again, remember, this is the Smoky group right now, but Western is going to have a similar recommendation, or we may choose, and actually Mr. Vine suggested that we do narrow it to one person from both groups so that the governors can either say up or down, or the secretary can say up or down and not give an option for them to choose. And our recommendation is Ed Carlton. Ed, as you know, has not only been our board chair, long-term service on the board, but he's also the chair of the council right now, and we think that he would be excellent to serve in that role. Don't mean to get into politics, but just to kind of help you think through some of our logic here. Brian may kill me, I see him grinning. But it's a reality that we have to deal with. You know, my day job is with the community college. I started there in '97, and since I've been there, every year the governor's had an appointee to our board of trustees, and every year it's always in the same party that the governor is, without exception. And even though this is the secretary, it's very likely that the secretary will make a similar kind of designation. Just so happens, and you may shoot me over here for outing him, but Ed would fit in that category. So we're hoping that if Western Highlands doesn't have someone they want to put forward, that we'll jointly agree. And I think based on comments today, that Ed may very well be our joint nominee. An attorney with healthcare expertise, Carolyn Coward, who lives here in Asheville, would be our recommendation as an attorney. It says an attorney with healthcare expertise, and that actually is her area of specialty. She's not a general practice lawyer that happens to do a little health. She works in healthcare. Jay, where you at, Jay?
Here.
Remind me of her. There's some kind of
She's
cousin-in-law.
married to Orville Coward, who's my first cousin, and I'm in the same law firm as he. But she's in the Van Winkle law firm in Asheville and has been working for them, I think, 14 years. And she lives here in Asheville.
Right. Highly recommended, but just by way of disclosure, we did want you to know the cousin-in-law by marriage.
And it's from Graham County.
Right.
Vicki, you brought that up. Let me ask, what's her maiden name, Jay?
Lloyd, her dad was Leonard Lloyd.
Okay.
Leonard Lloyd, not the one who does the law thing.
No, he was an attorney too. He was
Okay.
at one time
Okay,
thought to
sorry.
be the next governor of the state, but it didn't work out.
He was a very famous, very colorful attorney in Graham County.
Gotcha. But Western Highlands Group feels very strongly too. I think that to have found someone with that kind of expertise in our catchment area, I don't think they're going to put forward a different name. I think they're going to probably end up with that. A person with social service expertise and experience in MHTDSA, Joyce Edwards in Caldwell County. I see Joyce around, I'm sorry, I can't stand up here sometimes, you can't see her. She's not here tonight, but Joyce is a member of this board and has been. She's the DSS director in Caldwell County. The next one is a person with insurance expertise consistent with the scale and nature of the MCO. We did not have a specific recommendation. We had discussed possibly looking in one particular county for one, but we also mentioned to Western Highlands that may be an area, because, for example, with Buncombe as part of their area, they may very well have someone that they know has that kind of experience. They may not, but we're going to see what they come up with before we actively approach someone in that area. Person with financial expertise, we're recommending Rick French, board chair for that, because we not only, county managers deal with budgets every day, all day, and Rick has been on this board for a number of years, been our board chair. We don't think we can find anyone better, and I think he's highly regarded by the Western Highlands Group, so that's likely also a good shoe in there. Person with healthcare administration, Expertise consistent with the scale and nature of an MCO, Casey Cooper with the Qual Boundary. Do you remember Casey, who was on our board before? That's who we're recommending. A person with healthcare expertise and experience in the fields of MHDDSA, Janice Patterson from Clay County. Janice, are you here? Okay. I think most of you know Janice. She is the health department director in that county, if I'm not mistaken. And then the next three are all by the CPAC, so again, it wouldn't be our choice. So the names are essentially open there. One is an openly declared consumer, one is a family member from the CPAC, and then, of course, the CPAC chair designee, which of course is Pat. Now, again, back to what we were saying earlier, although some of them were already seeing some deference in each other's, area, but this is one, for example, where the CPACs will have to work together with the two groups to kind of come to a mutual agreement about, because there's two CPAC chairs, one for us and one for Western Highlands. We'll have to kind of work out those details. Pat may or may not. Have you all had any discussion of
We're having a little bit of a discussion about it. It's something that we really do need to work really quickly on, I guess, since everything got moved up. There is a possibility, and we've not discussed it in detail yet, and I feel kind of funny even talking about it because they may not want me, they may want somebody else, who knows, but, I feel like they probably will, at least in the Smoky area, want me, but, there's two ways I could go in, and I've asked myself this question: would I be better off to go in as a CFAC chair, or would I be better off to go in as an openly declared consumer? So,
But that's something we'll let you all work with. The one thing we will say is, especially after the meeting discussion today, we need to do it real quick. We're going to be having a meeting,
when do you need this information by?
Well, we're going to be meeting again on the 19th prior to the full board meeting on the 26th. And on the 19th, we'll hopefully finalize and negotiate between the two groups. They'll have whatever list they come up with. We'll have our list, and we'll combine them and figure out who's going to give on which areas. What we said was, and I saw a lot of nodding around the table, and that is that, ultimately, again, if you go back to what I said earlier about, or maybe I didn't say it down here, I said it upstairs, but we need people who are knowledgeable, that have the expertise, and are engaged, and people who are passionate about this. But unfortunately, we can't take every one of those persons. But we obviously know that, just like I mentioned here, I lost the placeholder. We didn't automatically think of someone with insurance experience. So we'll just probably defer in that area if they find someone who does. If you know someone who does in our area, that's good too, but we'll have to have some give and take in that. And hopefully what we'll end up with are those very kinds of people, passionate, engaged, knowledgeable. Then the last one is a county commissioner, and I hate to even bring this one up because I'm the person that's name was mentioned for that. I'll be happy to defer if you have a different person in mind, but that's the recommendation. Now, the one caveat on that, and I think we kind of clarified it today, but there does need to be further clarification. The statute says that the county, any county commissioner serving on the board serves as an ex officio member for, because it's longer or shorter, whichever, 3 years or their term as a county commissioner. It does not say non-voting specifically, and our understanding, talking with our attorneys, is that ex officio doesn't mean non-voting automatically, so we believe they would still have a vote. And so that's the list that we're putting forward, and we'll meet again on the 19th. Hopefully CPAC can maybe, whether it's by phone conference or meeting, come up with some folks. And If you have any comments about those, we'd be glad to hear it. And then my understanding, and I can't remember if it was in everybody's packet or just our packet, but essentially when we come up with our combined group, those folks will be seated 30 days after we
Within 30 days of the
merger or
Secretary's approval of the merger agreement,
or April.
April 14th, or April 1st, I guess, but we'll be ahead of that.
Right.
Well, I wondered about that April 1st. Does that mean we have till April 1st since we're in the middle of a merger?
Now, once she approves it.
Here's what happened, and I'll try to make this simple. You know, the original legislation from last year, the deadline to to come into compliance with the general statute was October 1st. Okay? Given all the transition activities, Senator Heiss was nice enough to include some language in a bill that basically, let's just say, waived that requirement for us temporarily. And the way the language in that bill was written, our waiver, that's my term, but functionally that's what it amounted to, expired within 30 days of the Secretary approving our merger agreement. Again, because this was done as a favor, because of all the merger and transition activities. So once you get those done, then you got to go and be like everybody else, is what that is. And just to make sure that it wasn't some kind of malingering thing, you know, by April, you know, the deadline would have to be April at the outside, I guess April 1st. So we'll be ahead of that based on the completion of our merger agreement and the Secretary's approval. That's basically how that works.
So that kind of supersedes that April 1st
Correct.
deadline. That
Whichever comes sooner.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
did you remember in the executive board meeting, I voiced my concern about Brown and Cherokee County not having a representative on this board? Would it be possible that, to give us, say, 48 hours to come up with that insurance person, if we could find one to represent one of those two counties?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't see why not. If you'd let either myself or Shelley know, because we'll be meeting with our counterparts on the Western Highlands side, Artie Wilson, and Mr. Mines, and so we'll need to know those because we'll meet prior to the 19th. You know, one thing to keep in mind again, so folks don't misunderstand, there was no effort on our part to exclude anyone. It's just there are only 21 positions, and with some of those being prescribed, for example, by the governor, by the CPAC, and so forth, we couldn't possibly fit everyone, but we tried to do as broad a stroke as we can in keeping, you know, regional representation, county commissioner representation, and ultimately, because we're going to have to combine our list with the Western Highlands list and come up with one group of 21, you know, and they know it won't be exactly 50-50. Technically, we have 15 counties, they have 8, but it won't necessarily be a 2-to-1 ratio, but it won't be 50-50 either. But ultimately, our grouping will have to pare down a lot, so a number of the counties won't have a representative ultimately, but we hope that in the end, geographically, and when Shelley and I were talking, we actually did that. We said, okay, we put this person here, how many do we have from the western counties, how many do we have from the northern, how many from the central, do we have county commissioners, do we have county managers, et cetera, et cetera. We, you know,
Were those the only two counties, Michael, that did not have a representative?
No, Watauga doesn't have a representative.
And we're talking, I'm sorry, yeah.
How many, Michael, how many counties do not have any representation?
Could you call those out?
Yeah, let me just go through and call them out. And
Were there any counties, and I asked this question in the executive meeting, were there any counties that had two?
And the answer to that is no. I mistakenly identified Carolyn Coward, the attorney, as being from Jackson. She actually lives here in Buncombe and works here. So there were none that had two, but we've got, we accept the list that I presented, I'm from McDowell, Janice is from Clay, Casey is from Qualla Boundary, Rick is from Alexander, Joyce is from Caldwell, Ed is from Wilkes, and that's, and then the 4 at-large, which would be Ash, Allegheny, Macon, and Jackson. So if I'm looking quickly here, that would leave in the northern region, that would leave Watauga and Avery.
Mr. Chairman,
Ed's from Wilkes.
excuse me, Michael. Since Wilkes is not going to be represented here, there's no reason for me to be here. I enjoyed coming up here and to the meetings, and I'm really involved in Health and Human Services and down in Raleigh and Wilkes County. And the whole reason why I came up here, I requested to be with Smoky Mountain due to the fact that my son was alcoholic and he died. He burned up in a fire. That was my problem. I just thought I'd bring that up. So thank you. I've enjoyed meeting everybody, and I'm going to leave since we're not going to be represented here. And you will probably more than likely hear from our attorney and our other county commissioners later on after I talk. So I appreciate it, and I apologize for cutting in on you. Thank you.
Understand, include anybody in this effort. It's an impossible task to figure out how to take what amounts to about, let's see, of the ones we have a choice on, there's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, Ed, I thought you were from Wilkes County.
Basically 7 plus 4 at large, 11 people out of a 30-member board. There's no way, you can't squeeze 1 gallon of water in a pint jar. I don't know how to do it. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Again, what counties are not represented?
And going back to that, it helped me out because I'm losing track here. Avery, Watauga, I believe in the north, and in the west would be, let's see, Haywood, Swain,
Graham.
and was that the only other one? And Cherokee.
Dana, do you know Gene Farley?
Yeah, and that's who I was thinking about, and he would be a good representative from those 2
Absolutely
counties.
would. He would,
Because he's got offices in both Graham and,
He has offices in both places,
Yeah.
and he was workforce development director.
yeah,
I mean,
I served on the
chairman for
FCA board with him too. and
Yeah.
He's good, he's a good
Good
resource.
man.
Well, I don't blame y'all at all. I appreciate how hard y'all have done to work this out.
He's in Jackson County, but moved back home to Graham County when he bought out Watauga.
I appreciate y'all working on that, but it's going to be really hard to take it back, and I need to go on public record here, to take it back to the county and try to get money out of these commissioners when there's no representation. And I know this is a Raleigh-based initiative. I just hope that it could have been worked out along the way for our exception, and that we could stretch that out, and if we do grow, then we'd meet that 1 point, that limit to not have this board problem. But I'm worried about the statewide effort to take boards and turn them into advisory boards with no power and no vote. And it's a real big problem in our state. And mental health providers and mental health patients are going to suffer from this. And you're looking at probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but 400,000 people that are going to be not represented on this board anymore. And that's not just 1 or 2. That's whole counties, 55,000 in Watauga County have no representation on this board anymore. And the rural counties are going to suffer more than the urban ones because of these categories they put in that rural counties don't have the same numbers to meet as the others. So this is really an unfair bill, and we're going to suffer consequences, but the whole state is going to suffer too, and especially the people we're supposed to be providing for, as you put so well, Michael. But I have to register I don't have anything against y'all, but this is crazy. And it's bad for business and it's bad for our state. So I just want to go on record as saying that trying to think the commissioners are going to be coming to an advisory board where they have no vote, no control over finances or policy. What's the point? And maybe that is the point, so the commissioners will not come to boards anymore. But the way for boards to be involved and for it to have a direct communication, every meeting I go back to Watauga County and report on what we've decided here and how we're working together and how it's going to affect our county. And not going to have that anymore. So it's a problem, but I don't blame you, Michael. I understand it's tough. I do want to point a little bit that as well as getting experienced people, you're putting the people that have been here the longest in positions which without really knowing, that they've come to meetings and have you looked at meeting attendance on these people too, and that they're committed to this as well, and I assume you have, so thank you.
I concur with my commissioner friend from Watauga. I guess about the same size, 50,000 plus. As you know, as a board, we had a tough time getting the money we needed this year, so we'll have the same problem. When you don't have representation, commissioners really don't want to, they don't want to put the money into it, so that's just the way it is. So.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but unfortunately, it's been cast upon us.
Yeah, we understand that. We're just voicing a concern.
Yeah, and I understand that. The other piece of it is to consider that while we're talking about roughly 11 positions out of 30, that ultimately when we go in negotiations with Western Highlands, that number may be 6 or 7, so there'll be even fewer of us.
23 counties.
Right, and ultimately, I hope that the people that we come up with, and I can speak for myself in saying this, and I think some of the others, that we're going to represent all of us just like the state legislator does. Our state legislator in McDowell County, for example, Josh Dobson, happens to live in our county, but he also represents the people in Mitchell and other northern counties north of us. And I know it's small comfort, and I understand that, but ultimately I hope that we will be representing all the consumers in all the counties, not just the ones in McDowell County or Alexander or Wilkes and that sort of thing. The other thing is Ronnie is still working very diligently trying to pursue the idea of getting some type of waiver for us, but unfortunately we can't wait for that to happen because we're under a deadline. And then we'll be talking some more in a little bit about a regional issue that may make all of this long-term moot. And I won't steal the thunder here, but it's I guess what I'm saying is here's where we're at today. We'll meet again the 19th, try to come up with a plan and have it for you next month. And unless somebody's got a magic bullet, we won't be able to satisfy what you're talking about, even though I fully understand it,
Mr. Chair, maybe what we need to do is defer discussion on this until after we get some of this other business out of the way, and then there may be some different.
You mean tonight, just go the other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sat here patiently raising my hand.
Yes, sir.
All others have just chimed in.
I'm sorry.
But I tend to agree here with Mr. Kennedy and your name escaped me there for a second. I know it's good. Bill, yeah. But I'd like to point out here, I'm assuming that these 7 counties that you've listed here that do not have representation, that does not include the Western Highlands either, does it? So that's going to add to that list, is that correct?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When it ultimately comes down to it, we'll lose additional positions to the
The
west.
second question is Buncombe County, let's take Buncombe County. Does Buncombe County have more than one representative?
We won't know until we get their list and try to negotiate it. They know that they won't have more than 50%, or not likely to.
Western Highlands, that is.
Western Highlands, that is. And quite possibly we will have a larger share than they will, simply because we have 15 counties and they haven't had as many folks submitting names for some of the positions and so forth. Can't speak out of turn, can't speak for them, but I think we got some indication today that there's some of the positions that they're going to defer to who we're recommending. And then, for example, on the one with the person with hospital experience that works with emergency departments and mission and so forth. We may defer to them on that one.
My point in asking that question was this: I did hear you say, Michael, and don't misunderstand me. Again, I agree with Kennedy wholeheartedly. You know, we're not blaming you. We realize that this is state legislation. We realize that, and nothing you can do about it. You've done the best you can do in making these appointments. I know that. But I did hear you say that you were considering the hospital administrator appointment, both from Cannon and from Haywood. But yet, and that's the reason I asked the question, was there another representative other than the one you're going to contact about the hospital administrator from Buncombe County? I did hear you say that you were originally considering both Cannon and Haywood as that representative.
Ironically, the person who they're recommending, while he works with Mission, he's retired from Spruce Pine, which is Mitchell County. He happens to be on a consulting contract with Mission, but he's did his work. He's the one that helped them. I think Chuck had mentioned that they were at least 25 million or something in the hole, and that this fellow brought it back from the brink for them, and they really highly regarded his work, and now he's helping Mission in some of their efforts. So he wouldn't be necessarily a Buncombe County person just because he happens to work on a consulting basis for Mission. He's actually from the Mitchell.
My point being, apparently you folks thought that there was qualified people within Cannon and within the hospital of Haywood that could do this job. But and that was my point in asking the question: are there other representatives other than this person? Other than this person that are from Buncombe County?
We don't know who Buncombe will recommend. Who Western Highlands will recommend yet. And they know that we're trying to get representation from different counties, and they know we don't want to stack it with any particular county having multiple folks. And I really feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but there seemed to be a meeting of the minds that they understand where we're headed with this, trying to get cross sections and nobody dominating and no larger counties dominating or anything of that sort. And they're very much, sounds like, willing to defer to us on some things. And so I think we'll come out as good as we can possibly come out of this.
Yes, I think we're wasting our time discussing this. It's set in stone, and there's a whole lot we can do about it, except turn it on our legislature. When we be on the phones, aggravate the heck out of it, we'll get something done. Working through Ronnie Bill.
Well, do you want to go on, and Dana, again, back to your point, you want to, at the end of the meeting, go back and talk about this a little bit more?
I think it would probably make people feel better once all the information is laid on the table.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with that. Yeah, move forward. Okay, let's move forward and we'll come back and revisit this. Okay. The next item is the status of the Smoky Western Consolidated Agreement. Brian?
Well, we really hit the pause button on that because of the recognition that the probably most difficult part of creating that agreement was going to have to do with board constitution. And we could have dodged that in some manner and just put a placeholder in the agreement, but as I explained to Billy earlier, the way this works is within 30 days of the secretary agreeing to that agreement, that board needs to be constituted. So we wouldn't be doing ourselves any favor. So we wanted to be sure that the board composition issue kind of got enough momentum so that we could feel confident that that was going to get done in a way that would be timely in relationship to our completion of the merger agreement. One very important piece of legislation that makes the job of creating that agreement much easier is Senate Bill 208. And if you haven't read that, I recommend you read it over a couple of times. It changes many things around how mergers are done. It's a bill that started off, and Allison's going to talk about it a little bit later, so I won't go into it, but it started off being a bill around the Secretary's authority to make decisions around termination of contracts, much like what was done with Western, but it defines the parameters and the criteria for success and failure in much more explicit terms. So, one of the other issues it does is then go into what would be the process after an MCO contract is terminated. How would it then be assigned? What would the rules be around the program that would continue versus the program that would not continue? So it sets out a lot of the basically requirements now around how those activities should occur, much of which are financial. Where before all of those were negotiable, now they're in general statute. So it really takes a lot of that, what would be very challenging discussions, it settles them. So that is going to make that merger agreement quite a bit easier than what it would have been without that piece of legislation. That in combination with the fact that I think we did a very, very good job on the management agreement, and we may in fact be able to refer to items in that management agreement that then set the stage for the merger agreement. All that being said, we're going to kind of get that back on track probably next week, and have probably a session with the executive committee or representatives from the executive committee, however we'd like to do it. Our process with this is to really get it whittled down and get a good product put together, and then let folks take a look at it and proceed in that manner. Our goal is to have that completed by October 1st. So that's what I can say about that.
May I ask one question, please, Chair?
Yes, sir.
I looked through this legislation. I need a little bit of clarification on something, that looks like it. It's on page 3 of the document that provided an act dealing with 208. At the bottom of page 3, it talks about composition, board composition. Regardless of the number of counties represented in MCO, is this still holding and binding to the duties of any of the commissioners on an advisory board? Would have no impact on anything dealing with budget?
Well, we kind of jumped over that, and probably, Michael, it would have been good to, do you want to, well, why don't I just defer to you to talk about that? I'm glad you caught that.
Well, certainly I'm no expert on it, but my understanding is that there is an advisory board that is required by the statute. It's not just for us, it's for any other of the groups like partners or
Yeah, this applies
any
to
of
all
the other
MCOs.
And those counties would have a commissioner representative to the board. So, for example, in our case, we'd have 23 in the catchment area that had 8 counties. The 8 counties would have that. Now, we discussed today at our meeting that that group wouldn't just meet and then send a letter or something like that, but that they would actually have a representative. And we discussed the idea of the county commissioner representative on this board being the one who would also serve to bring things from that advisory group back over to the board, so that that person can in some way represent that advisory group, although it may not be equivalent number of votes, if that makes sense. Does that make?
I mean, what it boils down to, Mike, if I can kind of simplify, I don't take a lot of time, but if you had an MCO with 50 members in it, I mean, you would have each of those counties with a commissioner in an advisory capacity. then I hear you saying that one representative that is going to be a commissioner and the MCO would have a vote.
They would have a vote, but they wouldn't have 50 votes.
No, I understand that.
Right, right.
So
That's the
the
way I.
distribution on that is, you know, and the fact, and I'll tell you, it's going to be, and I want to count a very small county. I've already poured out enough. But, you know, when you can't have anything to say about budget, personnel, governance, and policy making, it seems to be a moot point. You can have commissioners there.
Again, I'm at a loss.
But if the money doesn't
That would
come in-
explain something that I
If the
didn't.
money doesn't come
vote
in,
to
we're in
create.
violation of the law, right?
Pardon?
If the money, the allotment for the counties does not come in, we're in violation of the law. No?
Correct.
Unless you reduce your whole budget by 1%.
Which would mean if you totally eliminate it, then you totally eliminate your county budget.
And I just want to add, it's also very clear they were in cutting out counties, the top line on that page 3, LMEs can add counties to the existing county committee by the majority of the members of the LME board instead of by agreement of the majority of existing counties. So not only in the board composition, but they've spelled out very clearly there's certain counties that will have no vote and no say in these matters at all anymore. And that's just not right. And I understand you didn't do it, Mike. Excuse me.
And I don't know if you want any more detail than that or not, but
Thank you.
But that's the old kids out. That's how much.
Planning, you gotta say it. Planning. Sure.
And I think the idea with,
Hold on one second. Daniel.
It's my understanding, if we understood Mike correctly down here, and I prefer this to Jay, is there is no law that says counties have to pay money each year to this, is there?
There is, but it's not any better written than this is right here, put it that way.
in some ways it's worse written. There's no real policing.
It's not a single piece of legislation that got passed in a particular year. It just sort of evolved over the years. And there's no ratio to population or to the amount that you should put into it. For example, if Buncombe County came in through the Western Highlands, we wouldn't expect all of a sudden Buncombe County to pour in a similar amount of money based on its population. That's not what the law requires. It doesn't really set a benchmark for how much you're supposed to contribute at all. It's basically just tradition that we're having to live with, and that ought to be changed too. That was one part of the law that certainly should have been changed, but wasn't. And so we're just sort of, struggling along with that.
But there's nothing in concrete that says a county has to put money in their budget.
Yeah,
there is.
yes, there is. But there's nothing in that law that says how much you're supposed to put in.
Okay, correct.
But it says that you cannot reduce it, whatever you're putting in, unless in certain, that's the thing, it's very wishy-washy.
So when Haywood County, for example, put in 100,000 and then wanted to reduce it, we said the law says you can't reduce that from the 100,000 that you were putting in. And that's what it says, you can't reduce it. But whereas Wilkes County was putting in a great deal more than that. Excuse me. Is it Wilkes or Wausau?
Yeah, we put in 225 until last month, and
Yeah.
we took it down. And Wilkes is 540 or something, I think. It's pretty high, yeah.
So the law says you can't reduce that. But the law didn't say you have to put in 540 and you have to put in 100 and you have to put in another number. It just sort of evolved to where there was a number and the law says you can't reduce it.
And that's why we got that different per person, per billing rate that varies greatly
Right.
from county to county. That's
Right.
part of
That's
it.
correct, that's right.
You know, the one thing that's unfortunate about it, the law's written for them, granted, and people's feelings about it are strong, granted, and people want to reduce it, granted, but unfortunately, the way the system is set up now, we're an MCO that's managing all those Medicaid dollars and the state dollars and the county dollars, and trying to do the best we can. When folks make a decision to cut, what they're really cutting is the services in their area, because we can't do but so much with what we've got. So while we I know we sometimes want to make a stand by saying, well, you know, if I don't have that representation, we're going to cut our money because our people need representation and service. At the same time, when we do that, we're actually ending up cutting the services.
May I add
Because,
one more point?
you know, we don't get any extra state money or federal money when the county cuts out their money.
In the retreat that we had at the very first part of this year, that was one of the main things that we wanted to work on during the upcoming year. And unfortunately, because of this merger, this consolidation, it sort of got pushed to the back burner because we had more urgent things that we had to take care of. And now that this legislation has been passed, we still have to take it care of. We're trying to comply with that, but that's definitely been an important concern for this board for some time now.
I do remember, I've not been a commissioner in 32 months, 3 days, and 4 hours.
You're not counting.
But I do remember one year that we had to reduce the budget by, I think, 5 or 6%, and Smokey allowed us to reduce our contribution to them by that same amount.
Can do that.
Okay.
Well,
So
we as county commissioners all know about unfunded mandates. You know, this can work two ways. The state's always telling us that we have to do this, this, and this, but they don't give us the money to do it with. So if the state is going to want to take control of mental health, which I understand that. You know, I understand having experienced people knows much more about mental health than I do. But if they want to take total control of mental health, then they need to take total funding. And therefore, I think the counties in the next budget cycle is going to take a hard look at that. Folks, if we don't have any representation, and you want to take total control, and you want to throw us a bone, so to speak, with this new county commissioner advisory board, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing nothing more than throwing us a bone. If you want to do that, then fine, you fund it. And the law says they're going to have to take care of these people in these counties. So, you know, it works both ways. Unfunded mandates can work both ways. And I'd like to ask a question. When does this new county commissioner advisory board take effect? When will we be appointing those? And how will that be accomplished?
What I think you should do is think about that just like the newly constituted board, so that within 30 days of the secretary's approval,
No later than April 1.
whichever comes first.
Could be as early as October.
Well, I mean, let's just make up a timeline then to make it more concrete. If we complete and with the board's approval by, let's say, October 1st or something like that, we'll just make the date up. By October 1st, then we would send it to Raleigh for the secretary's approval. You know, how long is that going to take? Is that going to take 2 weeks? Is that going to take 2 months? If it takes 2 weeks, then it would be November 15th. If it takes 2 months, then it's October, November, December 1st. So we're we're dependent upon her approval, but I think it's because it's so important, I would think about that advisory board just like the board. We don't want to wait for that. We want to have it ready.
This makes me irate, I'm not irate at you folks, not at all. I realize that this is state legislation. But to create an advisory board just to appease the counties, that is just fascinating.
Was any other agency wanting to, any other group wanting to come to add to Smoky Mountain?
That's what we're getting ready to talk about.
Real quick. Good. In your office or our CEO, doesn't someone need to get out to each county though, that you cannot reduce your budget just so they'll have that information up front? That's the law today, and they ought to be aware of that, not just cut things and then say, well, your people ain't get no help for $100,000, whatever.
We contact all the counties right as they start their budget cycle. That's how it's done this year. That's how we do it.
Just as long as they're aware of that, it'll help a lot.
Oh, yes, sorry, I almost forgot, there was one other thing that we brought out in our meeting today, and that is there'll be a letter going out to each of the, it was originally, thank you, I couldn't find mine. that was going to be addressed to the chair of the County Board of Commissioners and Managers. In our meeting today, we asked that it actually go to all county commissioners and county managers, and that each of you and each of the Western Highlands folks get a copy of this. We approved that going out, and this is a letter that basically explains what we're going through, the October 1st time frame, and then on the back of it, it specifically talks about the consolidated entity and the board of directors for that entity, as well as this advisory council. And now, they don't have a copy of that. It wasn't in their packet, was it? But this will be going out straight away. Jill will be sending copies to each of you by email, each of the Western Highlands folks by email. Then there'll be called snail mail copies, hard copies, that'll go out to each of the commissioners and county managers. But it will kind of give a two-page summary of where we're headed with this merger process and what will happen with this advisory council and consolidated entity. Now, those of you on this board probably know much more about it than what's in this letter already. So don't get me wrong. It's not going to answer every little question you might have, but it will at least give your fellow commissioners and county managers kind of a summary of what's going on, what the time frame is, and the legislation that authorizes all of it. Or not authorizes, mandates.
You want to go ahead and touch on the regional plan?
Yeah, and before we do that, I'll say the same thing I said in the executive committee, and I don't know if it'll make you feel any better or not, but it's important for me to say that, when you call me, I answer and deal with your concerns regardless of you being on a board or not. And I know it doesn't take anything away from how strongly people feel about their participation and what that means to you and your role in local government. But to me, it's the same. You call me, you have a problem, you email me, and I respond to you regardless of whether you're a board member or not. I mean, that's how I look at what our responsibility is to county government. So it's just important for me to add that piece.
I don't think that was ever in question.
I know.
And in
that's
this
just
discussion, I didn't mean. I appreciate you saying that.
Yep.
But that's not.
I
Not, and the people being provided, and I'm not threatening to cut that money off. I'm just one of 5 board members. I voted to put all the money into Smoky, and it still got overruled. I'm just saying strategically, and hopefully y'all will be bringing something to us that'll make this whole discussion moot. But
yeah, well, I'm not sure this is the perfect segue for this, really, because I do not have a silver bullet. This is the law, and it's just what we have to deal with. And I think maybe what makes it more difficult, in fact, is that it's the combination of things. Not only are we having to take our 15 county board and reduce it, but we have to do it now in relationship to a merger of 23 counties. So it's really exacerbated. And it's been something that, we did focus a lot on. As a matter of fact, the retreat was really focused on that. We had Mark Botts, and for those of you that were here, had, I guess, just stayed until every question was answered, basically. And we kind of put it on the shelf, knowing, we had so much else happening. So it's kind of all bubbling here at once. Okay. And I guess maybe this fits under my statewide happenings a little bit, kind of merging into my territory here. But Rick and Michael asked if I would address this now in relationship to this board issue. We're 160,000 people short of the special condition, and you can read it in 208 there in some section. It talks about how if you have a population of 1.2 million or more, it's basically you're on your own. It's It's whatever you agree to is what your board becomes. And I don't know, does it say, does the secretary actually have to then?
Secretary has to approve
Yeah,
it.
so it's not like you got a blank ticket here. The secretary still has to approve that, and I don't know what the experience has been with that. But one thing that is becoming more and more clear is that for the future in North Carolina, there needs to be a fewer number of MCOs, okay? Now, this is a lot like the governance legislation. This is like Senate Bill 208. Brian Ingram didn't come up with this idea, okay? Is it in legislation? No, but it is such a strong element of conversation that I can tell you it will be part of public policy. There will be legislation around this. This goes to the whole idea that the governor and the secretary have around Medicaid reform and the very major change around how managed care will come into play with Medicaid. Currently, we have what's called a carve-out. We manage services for certain individuals with certain conditions, and Medicaid provides, we use Medicaid to reimburse providers for those services, okay? So it's not the entire part of healthcare. It's a certain amount of services, okay? So that's called a carve-out. And that works really well, and there's a lot of good reasons why that's the case. This is what you might consider specialty care, okay? The governor's plan would likely put all of this together. There would not be a 1915 BC waiver. We would not operate in the way we do with specialty services managed in relationship to a particular capitation. And this is a long conversation that I'm trying to make sure. We're very interested in UR2. We just haven't talked a lot about it, so let me be a little bit presumptuous. We're very interested in maintaining public management. The governor, the General Assembly has made a tremendous investment in this over the years that's allowed this to occur. And, you know, if you go back to all the conversations we had around the waiver, the reality is there's only so much money to do this. And as someone who's basically done this, either on the provider side or the payer side, almost my whole life, you're kidding yourself if you think you can do this in a way that doesn't include a completely organized plan for how care is going to be managed. And, you know, this is a long conversation, but, you know, give me that. This really does make sense. Well, the potential changes to this are very dramatic. We would like to see public management survive, and we would like to see the carve-out as we know it survive. We don't need more change at this point. You know, we're really striving for a degree of stability, and in seeking this, there is in a new vision. And again, this is another thing that, given all that we've had to deal with, we haven't had, you know, a lot of time to focus on that. It's a partnership for a healthy North Carolina. Look it up on the web. You know, we've talked about it to a certain degree here. We're interested in proposing an approach which would save those things that are really important to us, that public management, those things that are important in communities, and to do that within the construct of this 1915 BC waiver. In order to do that, we're going to have to get down from 10 if we count Western Highlands. If we don't count Western Highlands makes 11. If we count now as 10 because they're very soon to be part of us, that number has to get down to 3 or 4. And that would fit much more so with the governor's plan to have 3 or 4 comprehensive care entities. And that if we could accomplish that and, continue to educate people on really all the good things we've done, we do manage Medicaid. We do it without simply denying care. We are managing care for a good purpose that does have a realistic financial aspect to it that cannot be ignored. There is only so much money. There is only so much money. And to control the Medicaid budget, which is all you hear about, there has to be some mechanism to do that. And we have done that for our health plan, for what we're responsible to. So the gist of it is there needs to be as much efficiency as possible with what we do. There needs to be greater standardization with what we do. These are all elements of the governor's plan. And there needs to be not so much color on this map. There needs to be about 4 colors on this map. Now, how we get there is a great question. I think for some period of time, it'll probably be left up to us, us being the boards and the MCOs, and I think if we are to be successful in retaining a seat in the future for the plans that the governor and secretary have, we're going to have to come up with this kind of change and this different scale. And this is a big conversation. This would be worthy of a retreat. So I'm giving you kind of a boiled down version of where things are headed and the discussion we had at executive committee, and I'll defer to Rick or anyone else that was present there, the need that we have at Smoky and Western to prepare for that. Can we create a Western region that, for example, would include Partners in Centerpoint? Well, yeah, we can, if we get working on it. And what I have to say to you is it's the same kind of discussion I've had before. I didn't write that new plan for the governor. They didn't consult with me. They didn't consult with any of my colleagues. It came out of left field. I don't think the General Assembly is especially pleased with it. People are making peace with it. My job, and Jerry, this is the perfect segue to what you care about. We get money, okay? Under the waiver, we get a lot of money. We're the Medicaid bank. Our job is to create the greatest efficiency we can for service value for the people that are part of our health plan. We're a public insurance company, okay? Get the best efficiency we can out of that. We're going to have to drive more efficiencies out of this system by changing the scale of economy. My job is to get the best, what I call the best deal for us, given those values that I just described. That's my job. And I think for those of you that have been around me, you know that's really true. That's what I do for the organization. So when public policy happens, and when legislation happens, do I wring my hands for a while? Yeah, I do. And then I get busy figuring out, well, what am I going to do about it? And, I have all my little sayings, My job is to come up with plan A and plan B. And right now, plan A is to figure out how we are going to create some sustainability in this new world. And I believe that will be done through a smaller number of MCOs that will be organized around geographic regions. And I believe there's a window of opportunity where a plan like that can be put forth that will have traction. Now, I said this was an unusual segue, and I was right, wasn't I? Because remember how we started talking about this was in relationship to board governance. Well, if North Carolina gets sectioned up into 3 or 4 MCOs, and I guess they still would be called MCOs, you know, everybody would blow out the population requirements. I mean, if we did that with Partners and Centerpoint, I think our population would be around, I don't know, 2 million something. It would be 35 counties. Now, you know, we've had a discussion tonight that I completely get. You know, before I came to North Carolina, I worked in county government most of my life. I mean, I completely get this. The other part I have to explain to you is this is the best deal we're going to get. Billy Kennedy from Watauga County, you being one of 35 counties, we're going to be lucky. I got to work like hell to make that deal work. The alternative is a lot worse. And I don't know how to express that. I mean, that's a big conversation. I guess that's part of the faith you have to have and have always had in me in terms of understanding, you know, how this works out at the end of the day. And I don't expect there to be a lot of solace in this. It's what is happening. And we have to make the best of it. So I'm saying to you that being, you know, one county in a 35 county region, and these are conversations I've had with Western Highlands that I think in some ways has a lot more countiness to it. You know, the notion that they're now part of a 23 county region. And now I'm saying we're not done probably. It's got to get bigger. So, board governance, yeah, we'd be way over 1 million too then.
Which means we determine
Right.
population.
Well, you read that section in the, right, you read that section in the 208 that goes to that. I don't, you know, I don't want this to be your silver bullet. You know, we're not doing, that isn't being done to make the board bigger. If you understand me, that just is another piece coming that the law, and again, this is a little bit of a tangent. The law in North Carolina, it has nowhere near kept up with the pace of public policy. And legislation is trying to kind of run behind and patch things together here left and right, but it's not doing a great job. I mean, you see how big this governance bill was, that's last year. Within another year, it'd probably be irrelevant. I mean, other than to say that, well, then you've got, you know, you're bigger than 1.2, you do whatever you want. I mean, there'll be another piece of legislation around governance is what I'm telling you. So again, don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger.
There's also a piece of this that is about finances too. I know I hope you don't mind me mentioning it, we talked about it in the executive committee, and that's the whole idea of economic or financial efficiency. Brian calls it sometimes the below the line and above the line, the stuff where your citizens get service in your local counties is that below the line kind of stuff. Stuff above the line is the Brians of the world, the IT departments of the world, and those kind of things.
The back office.
In the back office. And you can achieve efficiencies in some of those. Do you need, well, he mentioned, for example, that it so happens that Partners and Centerpoint both have the same IT system that we have. Ours we happen to be better at it than they do, but because we're on similar systems with Alpha, there could be some real efficiency in that process, et cetera, et cetera. You get the point. And you can save some money in doing that. That money can be channeled to services as opposed to, you know, ultimately. So there's two advantages to it in some ways, and that is the efficiency financially, but also that nice piece about board governance that I use the term mood, and I apologize for making it sound like a silver bullet, but the reality is if we do this, at least to start the discussions, then it allows us to have a short window where we have 21 members, and then we can look at, you know, if we become larger, we can look at a better board structure.
I agree. I appreciate what y'all doing, and once again, the secretary could just change board governance as soon as we get bigger.
Well, the secretary can't, General
like you say,
Assembly, General Assembly, secretary can't. change
she'd have
the
to
law.
approve the board, or the secretary would.
Has the approval, right, has the
So,
responsibility.
it change the board governance, and they don't want to do it that way, they could veto the board governance at that point. Is that not correct?
It is correct, and
Okay.
and nobody knows what that would look like, but by the same token, you know, we would have, or any LME MCO that meets that threshold would have the opportunity to craft a board that would be likely something that the secretary might approve, and that would meet both sort of, you know, issues. So, I mean, you know, you don't know what the secretary would do, but we would have the opportunity at that point to suggest that this might be a more appropriate board structure.
Put our best foot forward.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if it achieves what they're going after in terms of reducing the number of MCOs, they're not likely to say, we don't give a flip what the legislature says, we don't want you to have this board governance. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, I'm being a little too blunt there, but they know what the law is. And if we're achieving their goal on the reducing MCO size, they're not likely to buck us on the plan that we come up with.
That won't be the most important thing people are worried about.
And just so you know, the counties, if it matters, the counties that are the partners are Cleveland, Gaston, Lincoln, Catawba, Burke, Iredell, Yadkin, and Surrey. Center Point is Rockingham, Stokes, Forsyth, and Dayton. And then you got Mecklenburg sitting down there by themselves, so.
So nobody's saying, you know, we're gonna merge, nobody's saying anything other than this has to change. It does. And it is relatively easy compared to other areas of the state, believe me. It is relatively easy to define a western region. And that's basically what we're, you know, we will have the opportunity to, you know, sell that, have that created as part of a plan that is a solution for, you know, what the governor and the secretary want to see. And you have to remember, there isn't a plan now. There is kind of the aspiration for what will happen. How we get from where we are to there is no plan. So again, that's my job. My job is to come up with a plan, to figure out, to get the best deal here.
Kind of like what we were talking about, we can either be in the driver's seat or we can be driven, or in your terms, be eaten.
At the table or on the menu.
Right. And actually, while, you know, you're talking about it, the executive committee actually gave approval to start a discussion phase to at least look at, you know, what this might look like and what kind of interest there might be on the part of those other groups. And I hope you don't mind saying that, but that was part of our vote in the executive committee.
Okay, why don't we move ahead? We actually have a closed session scheduled next. We have a closed session to discuss Evergreen Foundation legal issues pursuant to General Statute 33C 143-318.11.3. So we need a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Okay.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
There's something that's not done in a private.
Okay. Let's get started back at 6:30. Yeah, we're scattered. Anyway, like that. Brian?
Okay, we'll go as quickly, as efficiently as we can without underdoing, and of course we can always revisit things. The other statewide happenings, I think, is you know, the effort to create some kind of report cards for MCOs, and we had to do this as a handout. It's just came out within the last, I don't know, when was it, Monday night, Tuesday, something like that. Very fresh, and this is the first iteration of this report put out by the state, and of course the secretary, they had a press conference and announced this, and Julie and her staff put together, what I thought we needed to do was to have some way to display this that makes it easy to understand, and then obviously, this is what the world is looking at now, to understand how well we're doing. Compare Smoky to everyone else. They're trying to do an apples to apples kind of thing. Julie, can you give a whirlwind tour?
Okay, so yes, this came out Monday. Not everybody has this. They were printing more for us, but they haven't brought them. I apologize. This is the first draft. Like Brian said, they sent it out Monday or over the weekend, and I don't know if you know about how you get data and make graphs and stuff, but it was PDF and protected, so we had to copy all of it into Excel, and so this is a working document. But it shows you the benchmarks. We report monthly data to the state, and this is what they report back to us. It's not everything that we report, but this document that you have, next month, I promise it'll be better. It'll have titles on every page, page numbers. But it gives you an idea of how we are performing against our benchmarks and among LME MCOs. We don't, we can be proud about a lot of the things that we're doing. But this is the state's version of what we give you in the at-a-glance, pretty much. Our at-a-glance is very similar data, a little more consumer-friendly. But because this is what the state puts out, we're going to be giving this to you as well, because this is what other boards will be looking at and state officials will be looking at. But if you want to understand something a little better, the at-a-glance does explain it. Do you want me to talk about any particular measure?
I don't know where we'd start or end.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
But that's just a small explanation of what this is. And I will, there are about 3 of you that don't have packets, and again, I apologize, and they are printing them up at the front desk.
Now again, relate this back to Senate Bill 208, that is by and large focused on performance and what is good enough. And when you don't pass, what happens? And to be honest about it, I think the experience with Western is probably a genesis for a lot of this, just in terms of the way that particular situation was dealt with. The General Assembly wants to make it wants to reinforce the Secretary's authority and provide some guidance around that. So, this is, nobody should be surprised to see a document like this now being published.
But I want to commend staff. Some of these are very good stats relative to the other MCOs. I did have one question on the things like person served parentheses state. So this doesn't include, when it says state, the Medicaid folks. This is just folks served with state dollars. Is that correct?
Probably.
For example, it's saying.
I haven't spent a lot of time on this one. It would have to be, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that right.
There is, if you go further in the document, there is the Medicaid number too.
Okay.
So the reporting does differentiate for our state dollars from our Medicaid dollars. So that's where this report, you will have a little bit more information about state dollars than we give you in at-a-glance.
So we can, this is another thing that we should continue to make part of the packet and have discussion about. In the interest of time, I guess we'll keep rolling. Okay. Partnership for the Future, status of transition activities. Well, it's going well.
Okay.
And one measure of that is, with any kind of a big undertaking like this, you really have to have a good plan and check your progress. Where we are, we're on, we have the right pace to get everything done that we need to get done by October 1st, which is the point in time again when the Medicaid contract comes to the consolidated entity, which for the time being will continue to be called Smoky. And when the state funds contract, so the LME responsibilities of Western will all officially come directly to Smoky. And again, just to remind everyone, at this point, we have a management agreement so that you could say that Smoky oversees the operations of Western, and it will change October 1st in terms of having that direct contract, and there'll just be one organization. I think one of the biggest things we wanted to talk about tonight is just the status of the whole hiring, the creation of an organization chart, all the HR and hiring that's had to go on to get to become one organization. And you would think it would be simple to talk about how many FTEs and how many we used to have and how many Western had and how many we have in a new entity, but it's really not. So poor Nancy was on the receiving end of everybody's great recommendations Monday at our executive meeting, trying to design some reports that would make it at least intelligible. It would give you all the data and the information that would help you understand all the pieces to this. Because we're sensitive to how big we grow. The one thing I will say that is important, kind of an umbrella overall, that going into this, Western was understaffed and Smoky was understaffed. So we have not necessarily become smaller as a result of consolidation, because we had to kind of grow to where we needed to be and then try to figure out what's the right number of staff we need to have to do the activities. And it's just, I should probably just stop there because it gets a lot more complicated, why positions were added here and why they were added there. I think especially on the Western side, there's a lot of positions that are very directly related to clients and client care that'll be, very positive. Nancy's the best person to try to take you through these documents and orient you. And again, this might not be perfect the way we did it this time, but it's the best way we could try to organize the information, and we can have, more on this later. One other piece is, this is a to be determined kind of event. We put this out here. This is to the best of our ability. This will be shaped over time. Nancy, see if you can make sense of all of this for folks.
Okay. On the first sheet that you have, which is the smaller, not the legal size, the front says Human Resource Transition Vacancy Report, and I will highlight just a couple things. As Brian said, to talk about FTEs is not, you just can't say we have 453.45 FTEs and then think about what other MCOs look like and begin to understand that number and why that number is what it is. They're embedded in that 453 FTEs are service-funded positions. Those are positions that the funds are specific to those. We can't use those funds for anything other than those positions. And there are a total of 31 of those positions embedded in those FTEs. The other designated funding is related to the Department of Justice settlement, which is the transition to community living program, that you have seen a lot of data in the report card that Julie just went over. There's some data in there about the services that people are receiving as a result of this funding. And that funding actually designates the number of FTEs that we are to have for that program, which is a total of 19, which actually brings our total administrative FTEs down to 403.45. And the 0.45, just to give you an idea, we have a 0.25 that is a psychiatrist who provides peer review to our authorization process. And the 0.2 in this is also considered the PRN staff, what the PRN staff add up to in the call center. One of the changes that Smoky Mountain Center has made with this transition is that instead of contracting out our after-hours, holiday, and weekend coverage in our call center, we are now doing that internally. We will run 24/7. So we are staffing around the clock now, which is different than what we had done before. If you flip the page over and talk about care coordination, actually I'm sorry, I left that a little bit too soon. Michael Lavender had asked a question under the column posted vacancies regarding why were the numbers so high in community collaboration and in the MHSA care coordination and the IDB care coordination. Those are our two largest departments, and those are the two departments that impact your county significantly. So if you turn this over, and I'm going to go to the middle of the page first and then come back to the top of the page on the transition summary report. You'll see that in the fourth column over where it says total Western Highlands Network Smoky Mountain Center FTEs, this is, Brian talked about being significantly understaffed. The two organizations came into this transition with 77 vacancies in their, or FTEs in their budgets that were not filled. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Some of it has to do with difficulty in recruitment. Majority of it has to do with frozen positions because of some of the uncertainty that we experienced in the last fiscal year regarding funding. So we came in under at 77 positions. So when you look at the total, the FTEs that were budgeted for both of these organizations was a total of combined of 457.45, and the consolidated entity comes in at 453.25. Where we have found the most, the lack of staff, I would say, would be in care coordination and community collaboration. Western Highlands did not have a community collaboration department like we do, and so they did not, and they also did not have a consumer and family team like Smoky Mountain Center has, and we have added that, which have added a lot of value to our organization in the last year since we have gone live on waiver, and so we are really looking forward to being able to add that same value to the 8 counties that we will now be assuming responsibility for. You'll see that the FTE increases that are in the 5th column over on the very top chart. For mental health and substance abuse, we have increased by 20 care coordinators in the 8 counties in Western Highlands. Western Highlands had only 8 MHSA care coordinators. Their caseloads were huge, and as a result, they were unable to really meet the needs of the consumers in those counties for those high-risk, high-cost consumers. So we have based this on the caseloads, 1 to 5,000 Medicaid eligibles. If you recall, when we were going into waiver, our consultants actually did a lot of work with us on the organization charts and identified what they thought our ratio ought to be. We tried it, it was too high, we weren't able to meet the needs of our consumers in our counties. So we have found that 1 to 5,000 per Medicaid eligibles makes the most sense. for mental health substance abuse. For IDD, the caseloads are 1 to 35, and this is for 1,637 recipients for the two organizations combined, and we have also found this to be much more manageable. We did try doing we had 1 to 50 to 60, and it was way too much. And you'll see that Western Highlands had only 33 IDD, and we have added 11 to those counties in order to be able to meet their needs. The other factor with Western Highlands in care coordination is that Western Highlands currently contracted out 2 providers of child transition team activities and discharge planning team activities. Care coordination will not include those, and those will be MCO positions, and we will no longer contract with providers. In regards specifically to the transitions, you'll see in the first column under the Human Resource Transition Summary Report, there is the number of the total FTEs and the filled FTEs when we first began this process with Western Highlands. They had 182.2, and remember that .2 is their PRN to cover their 24/7 access center. They had 41 vacancies. Of the 182 that actually were employed with Western Highlands, we had 157 applicants. And just to give you an idea, we had many of those 157 applied for multiple positions. We scheduled over 500 interviews and completed all of those interviews with those staff for all of the positions, because we had told them they would be interviewed for every position they applied for which they were qualified. We have made 146.2 offers to date, and currently we stand at, there will be 36 that will receive or have already received a reduction in force letter. That 36 is actually a combination of staff that have decided to retire. One of those would be Charlie, who has decided not to stay on with us, but instead to retire. And then also there were quite a few that decided that they didn't want to apply for positions for whatever reason. And then of course there would be those that applied and were not offered a position, which is a much smaller number, for a variety of different reasons. Any questions?
Those folks who didn't apply for a position and therefore will be RIF, are they entitled to any kind of benefits either from us or from the state?
Yes, Western Highlands actually has a severance policy that is very generous. Employees who did not apply and even employees who applied and didn't receive a position, upon their September 30th, they will receive a week's pay for every year of service with Western Highlands up to 12 years. Western Highlands has actually been in operation for 9 years, so the maximum payout will be 9 weeks of salary.
That's all the question I have.
See, I have lots of questions. No questions.
Everybody's looking at me.
Usually have lots of questions.
Would you like me to do the location? I'm going to assume yes. The legal size sheet that you received was, Brian had thought you might want to see, based on location, where our staff are located. And you'll see that the column across the top, actually, the row across the top, are all the current Smoky Mountain Center and Western Highlands Network locations. These are either owned or leased spaces that we manage, our staff occupy them. You'll see that there is also a column right at the end that says community-based. These are positions that are actually based out in the counties, and they are based in DSSs, They could be based in senior centers. We also have some in provider organizations. Currently, there are 16 in care coordination that are based within the community. This number we expect to grow over the next several months as we begin to work with the counties, with the county managers of Western Highlands Network to identify space. I actually met with the county manager in Polk County last week and was able to identify room for 4 staff in Polk County. So we are beginning that process, so that number will grow. And what will happen is staff will come out of the Fletcher, Forest City, and Burnsville offices into the actual county itself in order to provide services. There is a double asterisk in community collaboration. As I said, this is a new department for Western Highlands Network, and we are still in the process of identifying what staff in those departments, where they will be located in the county. And that is under Jenny Pugh's purview. So we have been working and talking about that as we go forward to determine how her staff could best be utilized within the counties.
Good. Thank you, Nancy. Provider network development, and again, this is all under the partnership for the future heading. A lot of the discussion that we have had there has revolved around differences in the way Smoky traditionally contracts for state and county funded services versus Western. What Smoky does is follow a pattern of development of comprehensive providers where, again, we can get the greatest efficiency, service volume efficiency for the money, rather than having several smaller contributions made to multiple agencies. You know, and people say, well, what about choice and how many should we have? We'll have as many service opportunities for people as we can afford. It really comes down to that. And what we found is that we need to narrow the number of providers we use to make the best use of the money, because, Jerry, it goes to services to people, and that's really what it's about. So a lot of these differences are being exposed as we begin a new contracting cycle, where it's after October 1st, provider contracts will cease with Western, they will begin with Smoky. So we have begun to make some changes in relationship to that. The largest of which has to do with a change in mobile crisis, which has been a kind of a issue with the Western Highlands counties for some time, and it lets us consolidate that service line with an agency that also acts as a comprehensive provider, so that we can, again, tie that crisis intervention work to treatment and minimize the opportunities we have for people, you know, not making good use of treatment services, just barraging into the crisis continuum, if you will. And again, we bring this up just because it's a difference that we're kind of working through. I've been going out and meeting with all the counties in Western Highlands, and I think I have my last one tomorrow. So that'll just be an evolving piece that we do. Again, our responsibility as a managed care organization is to get that service value for clients. Community education, Christina and other folks have been going out and meeting, doing kind of more informal community meetings. Christina, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for the Western Highlands 8 counties, we started a week or so ago in the evening setting up community partnership meetings. And we've had consumers and families, DSS, providers, a variety of people come. We'll be more than glad to share that information with you. We've done two. We've done Madison County and Transylvania. Next week we do two. We will get through all the counties in the next couple of weeks. There'll be two meetings in Hendersonville and Buncombe because of the size of those communities. What we wanted to make sure the Smoky Mountain Center Board knows is that once we get past October, between October and before the holidays, we will get through all the counties and do public meetings again through all of Smoky Mountain's original 15 counties. So, because we don't want there to be a difference in the message, and again, we're trying to stay really clear on what the message is and what's been going on for our local community. So, we feel really good about it. We had small participation in Madison, but that kind of makes sense if you know some about that community. And we had real good participation in Transylvania the other night. So we will continue to do that. We've got a PowerPoint presentation. We're sort of just trying to catch people up. The big topic is about, do I get to still keep my Medicaid? What are you doing about my services? Who's my provider going to be? And what's the telephone number I call? And it's very, very basic for consumers and families. And we've learned a lot, and we're going to be tweaking what we do this coming week moving forward based on the lessons learned. So we'll keep you informed. I'm going to have Jill send you the schedule just so you have that. You may or may not ever decide to come or just want to come, but just so you know, and you'll definitely get the schedule for the other 15 counties after October 1st.
Okay. Use of marketing firm. Well, we're kind of a little bit on hold here with that. We're the way we have always talked about our relationship with Western is that we'd be creating a hybrid organization. It really is a new organization, and with that, we will have to think about what our identity is, and probably working with some kind of a marketing firm or public relations firm would be smart in terms of doing that. And the timing of that with this whole consideration for Western region, well, you can see where I'm headed here. It's a different day, and we're looking at a couple of organizations that specialize in healthcare and do that. And, we'll keep you posted, and that'll be a good activity for the new board to wrestle with, I figure. We'll get started. MIS transition to Smoky Mountain Center system. One of the big challenges and one of the big concerns we had with doing this was having sufficient time to make this change from the information technology system that Western Highlands used to the one that Smoky uses. And they're very, very different. Coming to an agreement with the state around pushing that back until October 1st. In other words, keeping the contracts with Western until October 1st so that we could make that migration. It was very, very, very big. And, we're coming down the pike here. Robert's he's now our Chief Information Officer. Robert, is there a simple way to explain where we are and what we need to do?
Well, it's a lot of information that has to be transitioned for providers, all the provider information, all the consumer information, all the existing authorization information has to be transitioned into the new system. This is a huge amount of data, huge undertaking. We've had a lot of staff from Western Highlands and from Smoky Mountain Center's MIS departments working around the clock nearly to get this data basically transition because of the differences between the two systems. But we're in the final testing phases, and in some cases have already implemented some of this data. So we're on track. We anticipate that October 1st will go as smooth as it can. Our biggest challenge to date is the statewide NC track system and the transition that affects us and the way that affects us. But we are working diligently with them to recognize issues. But we're on track.
Okay. Western Highlands Network closeout. We have to remember that after October 1st, even though Western Highlands Network is no longer, let's say, in business, and I don't want to say it doesn't exist, it exists in a very different way than it does now. There will continue to be a lot of work that needs to be done to kind of, as we say, close everything out. Well, what does that mean? That means that if a provider that contracts with Western Highlands now has a service that they deliver on September 30th, or however many, how many days in September? 30. Okay, I got that right.
Got it.
That's going to get billed at some point to Western Highlands. Well, just because they're not a business anymore after October 1st, that claim still needs to be able to be processed and be paid. So there'll be a lot of activities to sort of settle everything up with providers for any services that occurred before October 1st. Along with that are a variety of financial filings that have to be done. So there will be some element of Western Highlands business that has to be conducted for probably 6 months. The Western Highlands Board had the option of either retaining employees of Western Highlands to continue to do that, or to contract with Smokey to do that, and they chose the latter. So one of the actually other aspects, and I guess we can make this part of the merger agreement, although there would probably be a separate contract we would execute, would be around doing all of those closeout activities for Western. So that's really what that amounts to. Now, we spent a considerable amount of time at Western board meetings giving a very detailed report of all the activities that have to occur here. And Steve Wood, who's a consultant, has done a lot of work for us. He's been tasked with having that major responsibility. So really, that's what that's about. And what we'll do is we can, at some regular interval, and especially as we become one consolidated organization, provide information on the status of those closeout activities, because we'll still need to report on how that's going, although we don't perceive any major problems with doing that. It's just kind of sticking to it. Without Shelley here, I wouldn't even dare try to talk about the state and local business plan. She holds that near and dear to her heart. It is still a requirement. It's been changed. The format of that has been changed pretty significantly. I'm not sure exactly how it fits in this new world, but it is in the general statute and continues to be a requirement. And with these kinds of things, while it's a responsibility that we do it, we try to do it in a way that has some value. So we would always look at that as a place to describe improvements probably that we would want to make in different areas of our operation. Summary of key legislation. Talked quite a bit about 208. I'm very serious when I say to you, you should read that. It says a lot about how the new world that we're in now is going to be viewed in terms of performance. And again, we made references to the County Commissioner Advisory group that's also talked about there. And so much that's written in there will shape the merger agreement. Allison, the guardianship law.
Question, I don't want to labor the obvious here, but I didn't get a timeline. Is this our last chance to vote at a meeting with this new board?
Oh, no.
Does the board have to vote on that? And if the board does not accept that, does it go back to the appointment by the secretary?
You're asking about which?
If the board turns down the new board composition, the new board governance,
well,
what will happen then?
It's actually the county commissioners have the responsibility, and this is why we did this letters to make this as clear as possible. The county commissioners have the responsibility for approval of that slate of membership. Okay? So your question is, what happens if all the counties don't approve that?
Or
then-
majority don't approve.
well, then then we're not gonna be in compliance. I guess, I don't know what happens.
Just curious.
I don't think that, that's been tested.
And there
To
are
be
no
honest with you.
enforcement mechanisms within
No.
that, so we don't know what happens.
So that is potential option for this board to consider.
We need to comply with the law.
I understand that.
You know how lawyers like to answer these questions.
I'm all for
I'm
complying
gonna
with
tell
the
you.
law when you can't change it.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
am I looking for trouble in Raleigh? No, I'm not.
Oh, I know.
We're gonna have enough things where, we might wanna go and get help, and I would just hope that this wouldn't be one of them, because we're, the law is
But
the
we will
law.
have the September meeting before this goes into effect.
Yes, and again, our goal is to have that merger agreement done by October 1st. Now, there is not a requirement that it is done October 1st. We have just set that as a goal, like most things, so that we really get focused on it.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just had a question. So what you're saying is all the counties are mandated to approve this commission council, but if you don't approve it, then you're not complying with all. That's asinine. Why would you ask me? I told our school board the same thing. Why do you ask me to make a decision on something if I'm expected to make the decision you won't make? It's ridiculous.
It's called an advisory board, I believe.
Just a thought, and I'm ranting. It's like, well done. It just doesn't make sense that if you're giving us a choice, but there is no choice, then don't give me the choice to start with.
Well, the choice around how you constitute the Commissioner Advisory Council is pretty wide open, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that that's a great gift that you've been given, but I know the law is very broad around how that's done, what the work of that group is, so it's really not prescriptive. It just says that there will be one, and the language is very general.
Brian, how long do you think it'll be before the state goes private with all this much money?
Well, go back to what I talked about. What we're trying to do, I say we, I would say my colleagues, and whether I'm a good example or a bad example, I don't know. I moved 600 miles to do this because I believe it is the right thing to do. Okay? So, yeah, I'm easy to read on this one. I believe that public management is the right way to go about doing this, and I don't want to see the state go to a commercial model. Whether they do or they don't, I don't know. This is the window of opportunity. We're right back into that same conversation. This is the window of opportunity where we have to make some compromises in what we are today. So, when will the state do that? I think if we don't come together and accomplish the kinds of goals that have been laid out, then we will likely fall victim to commercialization. That's my opinion. And I don't, and there's judgment in what I'm saying, and I've prefaced it. That's my, it's been my career.
I just have a question regarding this 208, and this may actually be better directed toward a state representative. This says that the secretary must certify our compliance every 6 months starting August 1st. But with the new NC track system, it's not apparently working just right. And as Lisa indicated to us in the finance committee, there are a lot of things that are going into a black hole somewhere. We're not getting some reimbursements and things. Is there going to be any waiver of this first period of time until that system gets the bugs worked out? Because how can you certify that somebody's not in compliance when the system that's supposed to be helping track that isn't tracking properly yet? I guess it's.
I can't directly answer that question, but I think what I can say is that the LME finance directors and a number of other folks within the LME organizations and the LME directors have brought this matter and attention to the level of the state. They are making the connections. If you can't reconcile these different files that really get to your eligibilities, then how do you complete the rest of the reporting that gets to the certification? I think all this will come together one way or the other, but it is on the Secretary's radar. The department is paying attention to it, and I don't know how it will play out in regards to the certification.
Thank you.
The first certifications have already been made, and everybody passed.
In August, there was a report card issued and everybody passed, so, for what it's worth.
Whether that was.
Greeted on a curve.
Yeah.
Who was the gentleman that just spoke?
That's Ken Marsh. We should have introduced Ken. I think you've probably seen him. He's been around here at different meetings, a representative from DMH. And I think part of your mission, I guess, in particular, is in kind of monitoring our progress with our transition. We have reports that we do over the phone and different kind of checkups that we do, and then Ken's nice enough to make the long trip from Raleigh out here to check up on us in person.
Would you want to speak to the other board governance issues since you're here?
He doesn't work for the General Assembly.
Okay. But he could speak to whether the certification is, if we were out of compliance.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well,
we don't have to go into that.
Right.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
We'll give him his list of things to take back to Raleigh over dinner. Okay.
I just mentioned, just real quickly,
Yeah.
what's in the packet. Okay, in terms of the new legislation, there are a lot of things that have changed this year. I want to call your attention to the fact, obviously, you've already seen the summary of 208. If you have any additional questions on that, either tonight or any other time, you can contact me. Just to let you know, the House Bill 399 is included, and if you want to look at it, the only thing that is relevant here is the bottom of page 4, which provides for the extension of time in terms of complying with the board structure. But that's the only thing, so don't worry about looking at that whole bill. Then with regard to the MCO Communication Bulletin 52, that deals with House Bill 433, which is there's a summary that I created there too with regard to the guardianship bill. Last year there's some guardianship legislation. There were a lot of issues that came up this past year in terms of trying to comply with it. It frankly was a little more draconian than people may have thought. So this was an attempt to alleviate that some and allow some more options with guardians who also could be providers. So that's what that is. And then the other thing, just to let you know, this OHA appeals legislation, Senate Bill 553, this was passed around tonight. And although this bill was actually passed by the General Assembly the end of July, it just became effective on Monday because it went into effect without the governor's signature. And this has a lot of changes, very significant changes that will, I think, streamline a lot of things for LME MCOs, and I think make things a lot easier to a certain extent in terms of even consumers. If you wanted to have an in-person hearing with OAH, up until now, you've had to go to Raleigh for the hearing. This now provides that the hearings, if it's an in-person hearing, it will be in the headquarters county of the LME MCO, unless it is too difficult for the beneficiary to travel, and then it would be where the beneficiary is. But it keeps people from having, especially the western side, having to travel all the way to Raleigh. But anyway, there are a lot of different provisions in there. It really mostly makes it consistent, makes it very clear that OAH rulings need to comply with the federal law that's already there on the books. There were some questions about which law applied. This makes it very clear, and then it also makes it clear that there's a new section 108D that addresses all these things so that people aren't wondering whether 108A, 122C, whatever applies in these. It's specifically 108D, nothing else. So just to let you know that's there. Okay? I know I talked so fast, but I know everybody's trying to get out of here, and I'm just trying to make it quick.
Okay. Did, Finance Committee report.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, I'd like to suggest that since we've had the dashboards and everything that Jason has done, even though I appreciate the hard work he's done, but in the interest of time, if I could ask that part of it, if we defer that, if people have questions, they could check with.
All right with you, Jason?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Okay, the Finance Committee met this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and you had in your packet everything that we looked at in the Finance Committee right there, and 2 items we voted on. The item number 4, the June 2013 financial reports, and item number 6, the June 2013 Employee Benefit Fund. Vote was affirmative on both of those, and I would entertain a motion tonight to approve the action of the Finance Committee.
Second.
Any other discussion? None. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. I report, sir.
Thank you, okay. Quick, okay. Consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from 2017? And provider matter.
Make a motion, the minutes be approved as mailed out.
Could you say the consent agenda, could you get both items?
I make a motion, we approve both items.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We're missing anything?
Just dinner.
Yeah. I know there was some.
One more real quick thing. I don't mean to belabor the point, but this is a public place where we have a chance to challenge some of these rules that have come down and affected this board and that will affect all of us, whether you got on the new board or not. So I don't think that was wasted time. So, thank you for.
And I don't think it was wasted time either. It was certainly news to me that I was going to be a part of a large member. But I hope I will be a good representative of the county commissioners in a large position.
Bill?
This board continues to function until that date set and the new board takes off.
That's correct.
Yep. Again, it's 30 days. The way our special little, it's in $3.99. The way our special deal works, 30 days after the approval of the merger agreement by the secretary.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, motion and second to adjourn. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any more discussion? They've already made it. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, the meeting's adjourned.
You were just trying to start as fast as I did.
You too, George.